Hi, my name is Cindy Rang with the Fabric Patch in Ephrata, Washington. You can find us at fabricpatch.net, and today we're going to talk about mitered borders. We're going to talk about all of the math involved, show you several different options, and lots of cool tricks. Okay, so we have been slowly working through our border series. This is actually the 5th in our series, and what we're doing is our Celebrate the Seasons panels. So if you're part of this series, you either already have this fabric or you could still get it, and it is this panel that's been printed by Hoffman, and it has basically a 24 by 42 inch panel attached to a piece of fabric that you can potentially use for the backing or for borders or however you'd like. So again, this is our 5th one that we're doing. We've done something different each time, kind of progressively working through border options. What I do want to mention is, just like you saw in the opening, there are lots of opportunities for putting something in the center and putting borders around it. So it could be a quilt that you just want to get a little bit bigger, a really cool panel that you feel like has done all of the work for you, blocks that you want to put together, all kinds of options and all kinds of really cool border prints. But what we're going to do is something very simple today, because I think one of the things that we probably should have taught you early on is how to miter borders. It's a very important thing to do because it's important that it comes together correctly. So let me first show you over on this quilt what I'm talking about. Okay, border fabric. What's going to happen with a lot of collections of fabric is they will give you a border print. This particular one is called Elysian. Am I right side up? Yeah. So this one is butterflies. There's lots of different colors. This is pretty typical of what you might see. What you'll see on a print like this is that you have 4 different repeats for all 4 sides of your quilt. The other thing that you can tell pretty much straight away is that since this is a 42 inch width of fabric, you've got about a 10 inch border right there. So it's kind of nice because it not only gives you 10 inches of border, which is going to increase your quilt by 20 inches wide and 20 inches long, but it's really pretty easy to put on. Now, some people will just go ahead and put the border across the top, end it right there, and then put your border along the side. But then what happens is you have a border bumping into a border. So a better option tends to be mitering it. Now, people just tend to avoid this because they don't want to do it, but I'm just going to show you it is super, super simple to do. And even if, you know, we've got the little tiger here, half of his head is here and half of his head is here, but you can see that this whole thing as it comes around, it really looks correct and it really frames your quilt. So that's what we're going to do today on our Easter panel. So you might be watching just because you want to know how to do miters, and if so, we're going to get to that in just a second. But for the rest of you that have been working through all of these panels, I think we have 14 of them that we're doing, we are going to start in exactly the same way we've started with all of the others, which is to trim this piece down to 22.5 by 26.5 long. There is a little pattern, not only a pattern talking about how we did this particular project, but it also includes some basic mitering tips. It's a free download. There's a link below. But what I'm going to do really fast is I'm going to cut this to 22.5 wide, 26.5 long, just like all of the other ones. And of course I've got a 1 inch up above my picture here, 1 inch down here, and that's what gives me that 26.5 inch measurement. If you need help with that, go back to one of the other previous videos. You'll see how we did that. And of course, that's right on this line. Now, this piece, in many of the previous videos, we've used this for our backing. This time, I'm actually deciding to use this as my mitered border, as part of my mitered border. You might not. You might decide you want to save this for your backing. It will be big enough, and choose something different for your mitered border. But this time I'm going to live on the wild side and I'm cutting it up. All right, so we're all cut up. So again, here we are 22.5 by 26.5. This is my leftover piece. This is my leftover piece. I cut right on that edge, which is where that ended up. And then normally this piece that's sort of suggested for your back is normally, I have it all written on your pattern for you, is normally 39 inches by 42 inches. You can still do that and use a different piece if you'd like for your border. But for me, I wanted to do this, so I cut 4 pieces at 4 inches, which left me a back that is 23 by 42. Now, if you take 2/3 of a yard of one more piece of fabric, I chose this really cool green, you have 3 other pieces that you need. These are the pieces that I cut into 1.5 inches. I have 4 of these for my first little inner border that we're going to miter. And then I have my strips for my binding. Those are 2.5 inches. And then I have this 9-inch piece left over, this 1/4 of a yard. I'm going to take this 1/4 of a yard and I'm going to sew it next to this right here. So this is going to be my backing. I'm going to have a back that has this leftover piece and this leftover piece, so I still have my backing provided for my quilt. It's just this 2-part backing, which is kind of cool. And then I can go ahead and do my miters. So I'm going to throw this piece off, throw this piece off. These are just left for another project later on. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and take these 1.5 inch strips that I've cut, and I'm going to sew these onto these pieces, press these open, and then we'll be right back. All right, it looks like this. This again is our center piece. This is our 1.5 inch strip that we've sewn to our 4-inch strip, and we have 4 of them. I'm going to talk for 1 second about color. I love green. Green is like one of my favorite colors because I love everything floral. So this is the color that I picked. You can put anything you'd like there. You can put anything that you would like right here. This is just another color. I kind of felt like I could go either way. If you really feel like that's too much green and you wanted something a little bit springier, this is the other piece in this particular collection. And just in case you want the exact same thing, it's from the collection called Bloom Wildly, which I might add has a really cool panel. You could do kind of the same thing. So for just a minute, let's just talk about math. And I'm going to take this down for just a second because I'm going to show you another option that might make a little bit more sense. Okay. Just for 1 second, I want to show you, this is from the line You Are Loved. And the reason I want to do that is because we are making a border print to miter, but typically what's going to happen is you're going to see something similar to this. Now in the beginning I showed you this one. This one is very typical, where you might see a border print that is exactly 10 inches and it's very, very obvious where that border ends and the next one starts. But sometimes you'll see a border like this where you've got lots of small little options. I might decide to make my border, you know, just these guys, or just these guys, or just these guys. I've got 4. You kind of want to look and make sure that you know exactly where you're cutting and that you have everything that you want to have, so you don't start cutting and go, oh my gosh, now I've really messed up because I took way too much on my border. Does that make sense? So you'll have to look at that and see what you think. What I actually did is my borders are going to be 4 very even borders that look like this. This was where the repeat was right there. So all of them will look like that. So you want to know about math. This is a 10-inch border, right? So this is 21 inches right here. So I need 21 plus 10 plus 10. So I need 42 inches. This is actually not 21. This is actually 22 inches. I don't know why. It just is, and it doesn't matter. It can be square, it can be rectangle, doesn't make any difference. It just happens to be longer. So I have 22 inches, I need 10 plus 10, so I need 42. And I want everything to be in one piece. So I need a minimum of 42 inches. For this particular project, I went ahead and just cut 1.25 yards, which is 45 inches. So my borders are a little bit bigger. Because then what's going to happen is as I lay them around here, put them up, and as I go to sew them on, I'll be able to sew here, and I'll have 10 inches past and 10 inches past to be able to do my miter. All right, does that make sense? So it'll help you to know that if you are doing something else where you have kind of a really cool panel or a smaller quilt, or just a really pretty fabric that you want to be your focus piece, and you have a really neat border print, we just don't want you to be afraid to use those border prints. I'm going to take this down. I'm going to show you this at the end, how cute this is going to be. So you are going to see this again since it is Easter, and I just love this little guy right here. But I'm going to go ahead and put the other piece back up. Okay, so our spring is in the air is back up here. So again, I've got my top and my bottom sitting over here to the side for a second, because the next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to mark this. I'm going to show you up close how we do that, but what we have. Okay, so from our corner, if you can see on our ruler, here is our 1/2 inch mark. So here's our 1/4. So taking an appropriate pencil, whether you're using a lead pencil or a friction marker or a water erase marker, you're just going to put a little dot. And usually what I'll do is I'll make sure it's in the right spot, and then I'll move this out of the way, and I'll just make it nice and dark so I can see it. I'm going to do this on all 4 corners. And then what we're going to do once we've marked all of our corners, we're going to flip this over so I know the exact center of this strip, which is right here, and I'm going to fold the exact center of my panel, which is right here, and then I'm going to put right sides together and pin these, and then I'm going to show you up close. We're going to sew from one dot to the other. Okay, so I've got this pinned here. I'm going to go ahead and put in a couple of more pins, but when I go to the sewing machine, I'm going to start sewing right on this dot. I'm going to put my needle right in there. I'm going to take a few stitches forward, a few stitches back, and then my 1/4 inch seam, I'm going to sew all the way along here. And I'm going to do that until I get to the other side, and when I get, let me get that all pinned, when I get to the other side, I'm going to come up and stop right at that dot that I've made, and then I'm going to back stitch, and I'm going to end right there. So I'm going to go do that. I'll come back and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, we went ahead and changed to purple thread just so you can see our stitch, but I want you to see that that's what we did on both sides, is we sewed right to that dot and back stitched, starting right at this dot and back stitching. So you can see that that's what it looks like. We're leaving just that little 1/4 inch on both sides. Now what's going to happen is we're going to go to the opposite side that we started from. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to pin our border right in the center. We're going to start at that dot, back stitch, sew all the way down, go up to this dot and back stitch and end. We're going to do that. We'll be right back. Okay, here is the second one, and again we did the purple thread so you can see it, and again you can see we stopped right here, ended right here, and back stitched, because now we're going to do the opposite sides. This is not any different. We're going to go ahead and take this border, find the center, pin those together, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. You just want to get this edge kind of out of the way so that you start right at that point, take a couple stitches, back stitch, and then go all the way until you get to right here. You're going to do the same thing. Just make sure this is up out of the way. You're going to sew right up to that dot right there and then back stitch. We're going to do that on both sides, and then we're going to come back and show you what that looks like. Alright, this is what it looks like, and all 4 corners look exactly the same. So this was the first one where we back stitched and stopped, and then we came up to it, back stitched and stopped. So all of them look just like this, which looks a little bit strange because you've got these little flappy borders. So I'm going to open this up so you can take a bigger look, and you can see that this is what we have. So again, let's just review that you might see a border that looks like this, right? Where they've went ahead and they've taken some sort of a border print, they've put it on this way, they cut it off, and then they put this one this way. So what we're saying is that we think it would be really cool if, well, I can't even fold it that way, if we mitered it. So this is how you do it. Every corner we're going to do exactly the same. We're going to fold it over on top of each other. This little point right where we've sewn, and I usually kind of unfold it so I can see everything. And it's a little fussy, but it lines up just right. And again, I kind of unfold that so I can see that, because I want to be able to see that dot that we started with. And then I just want to make sure that my border is lined up. This one is a little bit easier because I actually created this border, so I have just a little locking tool in here because I can feel it. But where we have that printed border, you kind of want to fuss with it just a little bit and you'll pin it. But this is all lined up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to come around on your side, and I'm going to mark where I'm going to stitch. Okay, I'm going to show you a big shot first, and then we're going to zoom in where all of the action happens. So what's going to happen is I'm taking my ruler, I'm going to lay this up on the edge here, but what's really important is my 45-degree angle. Can you see that? Where it says 45-degree angle and there's that line right there. That line has to be across the top. It is imperative that it stay just like that, or else you're going to have this weird kind of a wow in the side of that. So I'm going to line that up there, and then I'm going to line the edge of the ruler down here. So let's look close up at this for just a second. We can see that this is where I stopped sewing. It's right there. You can see I stitched out to the dot and back. If I open that up in there, I can see that that's of course right where I am. I don't have any extra stitches in there, and I haven't missed any stitches. So I can feel confident that that's the edge, because one more time I'm going to put my needle down right in that spot, stitch up, back stitch, and then I'm going to sew along the line. So the line is going to be made from that spot right there, 45-degree angle, because I folded these right on top of each other. So I'm going to line up right there, make sure my pin, and again using an appropriate marking utensil. Is my hand in the way? Now I'm going to go ahead and put a pin, a couple of pins in here. I'm going to go to the sewing machine very carefully, and again I'm going to put my needle in right there, take a couple stitches, back stitch, sew off there. We're going to be right back. Okay, here it is. So again, purple thread so you can see what we're doing. We started right here, sewed forward, sewed back. I don't know if you can tell, that's a little back stitch right there, and then sewed right off that line. Now what actually is going to happen is I'm going to lay this down and I'm going to cut 1/4 of an inch past and cut all of this off. But I never do that before I check, just to make sure that everything really turned out the way it's supposed to. So let's open this up, and sure enough, it's exactly what it should look like. So here, and this is, so when you press this, we've got this perfect point right here, perfect point right here, and you have this really nice mitered edge. So let's talk for just a second. If you are sewing and you end up with a pucker right here, it's because, let's open this up again. If you end up with a pucker, it's because you sewed too far into the seam. Does that make sense? If you end up with a little hole right there, it's because you started too far out of that seam. So what happens is that little dot that we made in the very beginning, everything has to start and stop right at that dot. So you literally, using your hand wheel, you're going to put your needle right in right there and stop and start each time. And that's how you end up with this perfect point. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do this to all 3 of the other 4 corners. I'm going to then just put my little ruler here. I guess I need my long one. And I'll show you what I do is I'm just going to lay this up 1/4 of an inch past. I'm hoping my hair's not in the way. All right, so I have my 1/4 of an inch seam. One other thing before I press, I just want to mention, if you've done this before and you ended up with something where you have, this will press flat because I haven't pressed it yet, but if you end up with something where you have, again, that weird little excess, it's because you didn't have that 45-degree angle at the top. People think they need to line it up with this edge right here, but you don't. You want to line up here going out, so this has to be 45 right here. This has to be that perfect angle. So make sure that that 45-degree line is across the top, just the way I showed you. All right, we're going to do the other 3, and then we're going to show you our finished piece at the end. Okay, so that's it. Actually pretty simple. I'm just going to go ahead and flip this around so you can see. Hoping my pressing is good enough that you can see that that's what that back looks like. And that's what the front looks like. So again, this was our pieced border. And if you're doing these panels with us, again, you just need the 1 panel and 2/3 of a yard to do this particular project where we've got our inner border, we've got our binding, and we have our pieced back. So the entire thing is done with just the panel and 2/3 of a yard. But we also wanted to show you, if you were doing a regular border print, how that would look. And so we can show up close. That same thing is going to happen. You might find if there's a particular pattern in a border, you're going to see where things are going to be a little bit weird. Like over here, you've got the llama head and another part of his head. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's all okay. What we're looking for is that fact that the border goes all the way around and it stays in the right direction. So I'm going to show you one more little tip, and I'm just going to show you just before we close and before we do some close-up pictures for you. I'm going to go ahead and show you exactly how I cut that border, just in case you need to see that. But thanks a lot for watching, and I hope that borders and mitered corners are no longer scary. So the border that I chose to use, I am 1/4 of an inch past here into the white, and then I am right on this line right here, which means I decided not to use this piece. So I'm doing the same thing, so I'm just lining up my ruler so that I'm right on that 1/4 mark. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I've got that little 1/4 inch mark right on that outside edge of that. And I'm cutting this one all the way down. And then the other thing I'm doing is I'm cutting this one right on that edge where the gray meets the white. And I'm cutting that all the way down. So my borders look like this. I'm not using that. And look like this. And these are my 4 borders. Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.